you join me in prayer, please? Father God, we have seen you move in powerful ways. Lord, last several weeks, it's been fascinating to see you move. And I keep hearing a common phrase, there's a power that's present. And Lord, I echo that. I feel your presence. I feel your passion. Lord, your passion for this church, all of your churches, but I feel a passion for your mission to send your people into all the world and be your witnesses. Lord, we feel a passion that you have for your lost children. And so, Lord, we just ask that you would fuel us, continue to do that deeper work in us, and help us renew our enthusiasm, our passion, our zeal for your kingdom and for you. So, Lord, we come before your word today. Use it with power over our lives. Lord, transform us. Give us tender hearts that care about the things you care about. Pray this all in your powerful name, Jesus. Amen. You may be seated. Well, today, over the last several weeks, you've been here. You've been blessed by it's been just a wonderful, it's always great. Maybe I'm a little biased, but the last several weeks, it's just been interesting. There's like this feel of just kind of almost like a rock being rolled, like it's gaining momentum, and it's just been powerful to see, and I've seen it in the ways that you've responded. And I just want to encourage you to continue as the Spirit leads to respond faithfully, regardless. And today we're actually kind of talking about what many classical authors call the greatest story ever written. If you go beyond the Bible and you take the portions of the Bible and you just, maybe pull them out and make them just into a story within itself. This is that story, and it's fueled some of the most classic novels, stories, even plays. In some way, shape, or form, this is represented in a powerful way, and I can't say that enough. And so if you've ever seen, one of my favorite, one of the things I don't tell a lot of people, and maybe you might find this surprising, maybe not, I kind of like theater. And one of my favorite theater productions is Les Mis. Just powerful, and I love the movie. Maybe, Hugh Jackman. I got my boys to watch the movie because he's Wolverine, and so let's anything Hugh Jackman's in. But it's just this powerful story about redemption and about this lost person who just comes, and it's just all about the gospel. And it's Christian at its core. And what I loved about them, sometimes Hollywood, they kind of steer away from the Christian theme that are in these stories. They'll take a story and somehow they'll try to turn it into this great story, but take out all the God parts. They didn't do that with Les Mis. It's unapologetically Christian, and it's an unapologetically Christian story. But it comes from where we're going to be today. Some people have heard this story referred to as the prodigal son, prodigal meaning wasteful son. A lot of people believe that is way too limited of a description. Some people call it the tale of two sons. Some people even call it the tale of a loving father. And I think it's important that we kind of, as you study this story, it's important that we basically try to understand all three. There's three main characters in this story. There's the younger son who, and we'll talk about this in a minute, that kind of made some pretty major mistakes. There's the older son that never departed from the father, but yet did he really ever truly love the father? And then you have this father who just loves his sons. And you just see this interaction, and that's where we're going to go today. Now, before we do that, we've also been kind of going through our mission and our vision. 2 weeks ago, We had a gentleman from the denomination here, and he talked about church planting, multiplication, and he talked about how multiplication, Randy Weiner, who came here from the RCA, he said the number one instrument for reaching new people is a church plant. But there's something that kind of goes with that. One of the reasons why that's true is because a lot of the church people don't care about the lost anymore. They care about, I don't know, maybe their music, maybe their traditions, maybe their rituals. Maybe they like a church that doesn't require a lot from them. You know, one thing about church multiplication, it requires a lot of sacrifice. It requires human resources. It requires financial resources. And the only way that people are going to sacrifice financially and sacrifice with their time is if they're really, really into whatever the sacrifice is for. And if they're not in to reaching the lost, they're just not going to do it. They got other things they'd rather do. They got a lot of things that their money could go to, so many other things. And this is one of the challenges that you have. How do you get the people of God to care about what God cares about more than what they care about? Well, that's the challenge. The only way you do it is to tell them the biblical truth and invite them to be a part of it. And that's really all there is to it. Then last week we talked about our mission statement. This church was founded on really a basic premise. That's where we're going to seek, invite, and welcome people into the unconditional love of God. It's a love that's given. Now, we know that, God is not cool with sin. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love us. And that doesn't mean that as a father, when you see a child behaving in ways that brings them harm, just like a good father, you're like, you know what? I want you to stop doing that, but I want you to be with me. I want to help you. I want to show you. I love you. And it's like this invitation from God the Father to seek, invite, and welcome people into the unconditional love of God and share with them the good news about Jesus Christ, who's the way, the truth, and the life. That's why we're here. Everything else is secondary or to that purpose. I talked about last week how all the discipleship classes, everything that we do, all of those things are to equip us, to help us grow so that we can do what God's called us to do, which is to go into all the world and make disciples, be witnesses. And I talked about how, and even Randy talked 2 weeks ago, churches get out of alignment when they forget the purpose. You see, it's easy to say, well, it's about me feeling better about me. Well, that can be a byproduct of drawing close to the Lord. But bear in mind one thing, and I've said this before and I'll say it until I'm there. If what God wanted for you was the easiest, most luxurious life, then the second you believed, he would have zapped you out of here, because heaven is way better than here. Right? So why are we here? Because God is working. I talked to you about last week how the Coast Guard, our primary mission is search and rescue. That's what we did. We would go out on patrols, and you just out there in case something happens, in case the call comes in, and then you'd respond. And I spoke to you about the big four things that are represented in Luke chapter 15. The first thing is that something of great value is lost. And last week we talked about a sheep, we talked about a coin that are of great value. And so something highly valuable is lost. Then there's this search that does not end until what is lost is found. And then the third thing is there's a rescue. There's this moment of rescue. And then the fourth thing is joy. So these things play out. And I told you that there is no better feeling on earth than to be present in the moment of a rescue. It's just the greatest thing there is. And even in real life, Even in real life, we talked about our emergency responders and our people that are out there. Their job is to be there in that moment, and every hope is that there will be some kind of a rescue, perhaps. And when there is, there's immense gratitude and joy and all these things. One of the greatest cons that Satan can pull on us is to get us to forget that and start taking things for granted. And suddenly it's just a show. It's entertainment. And that's why we go to church. We go to church because I want to be entertained. And oh boy, you got one shot. If you don't entertain me, I'm going to be upset about it. Or, I want you to tell me something that makes me feel good. Or I want you to, with all this stuff, it's any wonder why churches get to this place where they're no longer relevant. Because rescue is messy. It's not clean. And it takes sacrifice. I've told you this story before. But people that are in services that serve the public, they serve at a sacrifice to their own lives. And that just goes with the territory. You'd never, I should say, being in the Coast Guard, I told you last week that the old saying is that a happy sailor is a complaining sailor, only we don't use the word complaining. There's another more colorful word that's used. But the point is that it takes sacrifice. And I've told many of you this story if you've been here before, but I can remember the time when I was in the service and we were coming into port. We had been gone for 2 weeks. And I can remember pulling into port, and there was Vicky. And I was so happy to see her. She was literally on the pier, and then we were coming in, and all of a sudden there was a call that came out. There was an emergency. We had to go on a rescue mission. And so we pulled right out again because that's part of the deal. That's what you sign up for. And I use the analogy that this is like a vessel. It's like a Coast Guard vessel, if you would. Our job as people is to search and rescue. And if you are on board a vessel and you are not part of the mission and the vision, you don't know why you're there, then it's only a matter of time before you start to complain. Or maybe you try to get off the vessel. But this whole time, as we're nearing our ministry year, my goal is to remind us what the point is. Because that's what makes everything worthwhile. Why volunteer at a church? Why not just have your own person? Why sacrifice to volunteer at a church? Well, what if you volunteer and you're in that moment where you plant seeds that eventually lead to a rescue? What if many years from now, you're that influencing factor in that person's life that as they look back in their lives and they think about the ways that God has blessed them, your face comes up to them? What if? What if you're there the moment of the rescue and you get to take part in the joy of the rescue? What if? And you can say, well, I don't know enough to be there at that moment of rescue. I'm not trained enough. Discipleship classes. What are you doing about it? Can we at least be honest that there's probably some of us that don't look at it that way? And if you're a person that doesn't look at it that way, maybe you have seasons where you ask yourself, what's the big deal? What's the point? Can I tell you that everybody in this room, probably at least 110 years from now, will understand what the big point is? Because none of us will be here. We'll be somewhere else. And we'll be sitting in the presence of God. And we have scripture that tells us there is more rejoicing in heaven over one lost person who repents than 99 others who are righteous and don't need to repent. There's a party going on in heaven right now. And we get to feel the joy. It's so major that there's just endless worship going on, endless celebration. And it's so powerful that it literally, it like rains down on us. But there's a lot of people that miss it. And that's That's the part of this story. As we talk about the two brothers, you see one brother that has one point of view, and you see another brother that has another. So we're going to go to that. If you've got your Bibles, turn to Luke 15, verse 11, and this is where we're going to begin. So again, Jesus gets chastised by the Pharisees, by the religious people, for hanging out with sinners. How dare he? How dare he even eat with them, defile himself by being around such notorious sinful people? And so Jesus tells a couple stories. We went over those last week. And so we get to verse 11. Now, before we go, let's remind ourselves our vision is we share biblical truth in a culturally relevant way for people that genuinely seek to know the one true God by following and worshiping the way Jesus Christ. The power that God has for you to equip you, to change you, to empower you to do the things that he wants for you to do is in the Word of God. And if you're not reading the Word of God, then you're missing it. You're missing it. I'm struck by the fact, obviously one of the sports that I know best is football. And I know there's probably those of you that, he's going to talk about football again. Well, yes, it's almost football season. So, and technically it is kind of, sort of, it's preseason. For those of us who love football, we'll take whatever we can get. Scrimmage, practice, anything. But they didn't start getting ready for football season a few weeks ago. They've been doing it for the last year. And that's the part that we have to understand. And so if you want to equip yourself, you have to do it constantly. Because you never know when the time's going to come where you're going to be placed in that moment of rescue. So in verse 11, to illustrate the point further, Jesus told him this story. A man had two sons. The younger son told his father, I want my share of your estate now before you die. So his father agreed to divide his wealth between his sons. Now there's a couple things here. Number one, this is a story told in the Middle East. So there's a lot of Middle Eastern cultural contexts that are present here that maybe in the interest of making something culturally relevant, I need to explain to you. First thing is that typically, and this is standard with us too, is you don't get your share of the estate until the father dies. And that would pass on to the sons. This was the way that they would, they didn't have money then, they didn't have bank accounts, they didn't have any of those things. So they literally had inheritance. And so it would pass down. But the way that they broke it down is that you would take the number of sons and you would divide that amongst the sons, but give the oldest son a double portion. So in this particular case, to divide up the estate, the younger son got 1/3, and the older son gets 2/3. But the younger son wanted his 1/3. Now, because Jesus is telling this story to people that would have found this extremely offensive, and maybe it can pass over us if we're not paying attention, but Jesus basically said that this younger son told his father, I want you dead. I don't want to wait until you actually die. I want to live the rest of my life as if you're dead. Now, before we go any further, one of the things that's important for us to understand as we read a parable, it's like, well, where do I land in the parable? And how do I understand? And if I'm going to connect to it, then I need to make sense to it. Well, some of us in this room are this younger son. And some of us may not realize that we're the younger son. But let me ask you a question. If you were kind of measure, let's just go back 1 week. Have you lived as though God was dead? If the Father is God, have you more or less acted? Now, see, every one of us gets this. In theology, it's called general grace. It's this idea that everybody in here, you receive a portion of your inheritance on earth. But most people don't, they take it completely for granted. They don't care. They don't acknowledge that it comes from God the Father. They're not too concerned about it. They just figure that it's due to them, just like this younger son. See, this is where we go wrong, is we start to think that our stuff is our stuff. I earned it. Well, maybe that's true in some part. But what if you said, if there's a God, if he is our Father, how am I living? Am I living as though in my mind he's dead? And I'm squandering my inheritance. I'm just living it, doing whatever I want with it. And I'm doing, it's mine after all. I want it now. I get it now. I'm going to live the way that I want to live. Now, in this particular culture, that would have been scandalous and extremely offensive. And they have things, even today, they have things in the Middle East called honor killings. If you disgrace your family, they can literally kill you to restore honor to the family. These things still happen today. It actually happens on a fairly regular basis for people to become Christians in a non-Christian Middle Eastern region. See, here in America, becoming a Christian is kind of like, well, do I want to do it? Do I not want to do it? No. In other places of the world, people are coming to Christ and they're losing everything. Because, see, to them, Christ is more valuable than anything else on earth. And they're losing their families and they're literally taking their lives into their own hands. And you have people that have literally been killed for becoming Christians or have been severely injured because the intent was to kill. And so when a child dishonors the father, in this culture, the father completely has the right to take out the child. And that happened quite frequently. And as Jesus was telling this story to the people that were listening, they would have said, you need to take out this child's being rebellious. You need to take him out. He wants you dead. He has no respect for the father. He's brought shame to the family by even requesting such a thing. And then for Jesus to say, so his father agreed to divide the wealth, everybody listening would have been, this story's terrible. You got to be kidding me. No father would do that. Nobody. But Jesus wasn't talking about an earthly father. He goes on to say, verse 13, a few days later, this younger son packed all his belongings and moved to a distant land, and there he wasted all his money in wild living. Stop right there. A few days later. See, in the Bible, there's important phrases. So this father was a farmer. For the farmers in the congregation, how much money do you get for your property and all your possessions if you sold it in 2 days? You're basically giving it away. You're not getting the full value. You've discounted everything. It's literally a fire sale, right? It's like all things must go. Just give me your highest bid and take it. And the people there would have known. So not only did he divide up his possessions, but it was highly discounted and devalued. And he gave to his sons anyway. Says he wasted all his money in wild living. This is where the prodigal piece, the wasteful son, he squandered it. He just took it, and he didn't even give any regard to the father. He didn't remember any of the lessons. He didn't want to multiply it. He just wanted to consume it. It's all he wanted to do. There was no investment. There was no strategy. It was just day to day to day. Consume, 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 consume. And it says in verse 14, about the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land, and he began to starve. Oftentimes, people find themselves at a stage in life where they don't think into the future. They're just thinking day by day by day by day. And actually, that's actually one of the things. So as a parent, one of the hardest things we have to do is teach our kids to think strategically and long term, but you can't do that if you don't. Too many people today are just living day to day, day to day. What are you going to be doing? Sometimes, when I meet with people or I try to encourage people, I'll say to them, I say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? I don't know. Do you see yourself? Because the idea is that if you want to be somewhere in 5 years, you need to start doing it today, and then you'll work your way to where you want to be. You can't just suddenly arrive. It doesn't work that way. Anybody here ever hear of that analogy of climbing Mount Everest? If somebody flew you to the top and dropped you off the top of Mount Everest, you would suffocate to death because you can't breathe up there. But if you walk up Mount Everest, the process of climbing the mountain prepares you to breathe when you get up there. Now, it's still thin air, and a lot of people bring oxygen, but nonetheless, your body, the whole process of getting there prepares you to be there. And that's a principle that slowly but surely is dying in our country because they're driven by what's today. Well, there's really only kind of one area that I think that works most effectively, and that's in salvation. See, everybody in this room should consider salvation today if they don't already have it. If you don't know the Lord, you need to consider today being the day. Now you can sit there and say, well, maybe I'll be somewhere further along in 5 years. And yes, that is the plan. That's the hope. But what about for today? He began to starve. It says in verse 15. Now, one thing I would also add here is that he was a Jew, and he was in a Gentile country because it says it was a country far away. So he left. Now, that in itself was scandalous because Jews considered Gentiles to basically be extremely unclean. And whenever Jews would travel through Gentile countries, when they would get back to the border of the Jewish country, they would literally shake the Gentile dust off their feet. Because that was, even the ground they walked on was unclean. And so for him to go into this other country, he was in a Gentile country, that also was scandalous. But about the time his money ran out, a great famine swept over the land. He began to starve. He persuaded a local farmer to hire him, and the man sent him into the fields to feed the pigs. Now, the other thing you need to know, us being here from Iowa, we don't have a problem with pigs. We kind of like pigs, especially with a little barbecue sauce, right? A little sweet and spicy, Baby Ray's. Okay? Now, they didn't eat pigs. In this culture, pigs were unclean. And they were actually forbidden by God to eat pigs. There's a lot of reasons to that. It had to do with the fact, at the time, God didn't want them to eat pigs because pigs ate things that weren't good. It's not good to consume an animal that eats certain things, right? And if the pig still ate today what they ate then, I wouldn't eat pigs, okay? They're not like a cow. A cow has a natural filtration system in their stomachs, a series of stomachs. So they eat something, it goes through like this filtration system before it gets to the flesh. It's like filtered. Not with a pig. Whatever they eat goes straight into the flesh. And so that's why a lot of farmers, they're very meticulous about what they're fed and the situations. It's not even the same. It's not even similar today as it was 2,000 years ago. But he was sent to feed the pigs. The young man became so hungry that even the pods he was feeding the pigs looked good to him. So the only thing worse than eating pigs is eating what they eat. You talk about being lost. You literally are eating the garbage that pigs eat. I'll never forget, if you've ever been to the third world country, there's nothing quite like, so if you go to Haiti or Africa or any place like that, occasionally they still have city dumps. And you go to the city dumps in a lot of these really poor places, and you will see animals like goat and pigs in the city dump eating the food. That's what they do. That's, I don't have to pay for feed then. And so I'll never forget the day. So we're in Haiti, we're driving around, and you see the city dump, and you about imagine what it smells like. And there's all these goats sitting there eating in the city dump. Now, goats will eat anything, right? So then we get back, after a hard day of mission work, we get back, and we sit, and we're sitting down for supper, and we have this meat. It's like, what is this? It's goat. And if you've ever eaten goat, it's not too bad. It's pretty good. But you think about what these animals eat. And at no time have I ever been hungry enough to consider to eat what those goats were eating. But can you imagine? So there he is, complete desperation. I mean, you talk about rock bottom. This is rock bottom. And there he was. And it says that he was feeding the pigs, but no one gave him anything. One of the key parts of that is that farmer was in the famine too. And so he didn't even get paid. So it was all for nothing. Nobody ever gave him anything. And one commentator said, in the end, he became a pig. He was no different than the pigs that were surrounding him. He wanted to eat what they ate. He was with them. He was dealing with them. And he got absolutely nothing for his effort. And so that's this picture. Now, before we go any further, it's important that we point out that this is the position of somebody who's lost. Now, it's an extreme condition, but I think it's important that Jesus, as he's talking to the Pharisees, it's important that he points out, like, the worst case scenario, because you're going to see the response. And so, obviously, logic dictates that if God responds to the worst case in this way, then it's pretty much universal that he's going to do the same for every other situation. If you think about the worst thing you can imagine and how you react to that, well, anything that gets better will have a better reaction. So just in case anybody here, as we go further, thinks that they have gotten to this place beyond where God could find them or beyond the place where God could love them, you haven't. Because this is the most extreme case there could possibly be in this situation. Now, verse 17, everything pivots on verse 17, and this is a big verse. It says, when he finally came to his senses, he said to himself, at home even the hired servants have food enough to spare, and here I am dying of hunger. When he finally came to his senses, this is the part that's difficult. And Jesus takes us kind of to this next layer. So part of the searching for the lost, there has to be a revelation. Somewhere in this process, it'd be like if you came upon somebody out in the middle of the ocean floating on a raft, and you said, hey, we're here to rescue you. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm just floating. I'm fine. Thanks, but see you later. I'm fine. Part of the rescue is that the person has to know that they need rescuing. And there's a lot of people in this world today, they are lost. They don't care. They're just completely cool with it. I told you last week that I can remember being so lost, I didn't know I was lost. And if you had come up to me and said, hey man, you're lost, I would have said, what are you talking about? I'm fine. I'm good. But somewhere along the line, I came to my senses and I thought, you know what? I am lost. I remember saying to myself, if there's a God, I don't know him. And that doesn't seem right to me. If there is a God, if all of this is real, then I should be living differently. There should be different meaning in my life. I read this Bible and I hear things like this power from God. I hear things about the Holy Spirit and God dwelling within people, living, abiding in people. And now his dwelling place is deep down inside of us. We are the temple of the Lord. I hear things like that. And I knew that at that point in my life, that was not me. I knew it. I'd grown up in church. I went to church. If you'd asked me if I was a Christian, I would have said yes. But something wasn't connecting. Something was off. And I remember that moment of realizing, and I said to myself, I don't think I have it. But I want it. I want to be in a relationship with God. And you get to this point in your life where it's like, you know what? I don't want anything else. I don't want God plus this other stuff. If I have to choose between worldly things and God, I want God. I will seek first the kingdom of God, and then I'll allow all other things to be given to me. And there's nothing on earth that I hold so tightly to that I'm going to trade God for. Nothing. I wasn't like that before. This son, he's got this speech ready. He's going to come back to the father, and he's going to say, you know what? I'm not worthy to be your son. Listen to this. He says, I'll go home to my father, and I'll say, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you. I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Please take me on as a hired servant. I may not be your son, but I just want to be, I know there's a lot of good things in your vicinity, so just allow me to be somewhat near to your presence. I think that's the way a lot of people come into church. They come in, they don't feel like a child of God. They feel completely unworthy, maybe even to be in a church or to be in a situation. But they know that it's good, so they want to be there. They know that, I remember when we first started taking our kids to church, it wasn't because I wanted them to know Jesus. It was because I wanted them to know some moral things, and I thought it was important. How could I want them to have something that I didn't have? So I just thought, you know what? Church is good. Kids, go to church. You can learn lots of good things. You can learn not to kill people and not to steal from people and not to tell lies. And you can learn all those things, not to covet thy neighbor's wife. All that stuff, that's good. We'll just take them, we'll teach them all about that stuff. And that's the way a lot of people go to church. But as soon as I got to know God, my heart changed. Now I don't want my kids to know about God. I want them to know God because it's so meaningful to me. And see, they saw that in me. The old line is, and this is important for all you parents in here to understand, faith isn't as much taught as it's caught. Your kids are watching you. Your kids, I remember, they're watching you. And if it doesn't mean that much to you, barring a major moment of transformation in their lives, it's not going to mean that much to them. So probably the number one thing that I think as parents need to do is make a decision. What do I value? Because if I don't want my kids to value that, then I need to change what I value. Because I want my kids to value God. One of the things that was so important for me to teach our kids, it's not that you can't live in the world and have fun in the world, but in the end, the only thing that matters is Jesus. That's all you're left with. I've never, the old saying is, you've never seen a U-Haul behind a hearse. All you're left with, in the end, is your belief. That's it. All the striving, all the working, all the recreation and the fun. Not that you can't do that. But if you don't have what makes life worth living, then it's a waste of your time. Complete waste. I'll never forget the time I had somebody told a story about this retired couple. And after they retired, they decided they'd saved enough money. And they decided, you know what, we're just going to travel the world. And we're going to go from one beach to the other beach, to the other beach, to the other beach. And you know what, we're just going to, before we die, our goal is to see every single beach in the world. And every time they went to a beach, they'd collect a seashell from that beach. And they would put it in this jar, and they had this jar. And the jar was getting fuller and fuller of seashells. And then they died. And they stood before God, and God literally said, what did you do with your life? And all they had was this big jar of seashells. Whoop-de-doo. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not like that's a sin. But is there something more important? Is there something of greater value that lasts forever? And the answer is yes, there is. It's the Father. The Father is what matters. Loving the Father and loving what the Father loves. This is what gives meaning to life. It's why we're here. We're just a broken creation until we find what it is that we were created for. We were created to be in relationship with the Father, to be in relationship with God. And this is why Jesus came to the earth. So he says, please take me on as your hired servant. So he returned home to his father. And while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. How could he see him? He was watching. He was looking for his son. He didn't get to this place of just, forget it. He was looking for his son to return. He was waiting for his son to come to his senses. This is all part of the process, but the father was watching. Now, his son would have had to walk through the village to get home. The villagers, the people, they would have known about how he dishonored his father, and they probably would have tried to kill him. So his father ran. Now, one thing in this particular culture, men don't run. Men wear robes. If they run, they have to lift up their robes to run, otherwise they're going to trip. It's not cool to expose your ankles or your lower legs or any part of your body in Middle Eastern culture. Even today, I can tell you about the time I almost started a riot in Bethlehem because I was wearing shorts. It's actually quite a funny story. It's one of the reasons why I don't like to wear shorts when I preach. So, anyway, I digress. But the point is that this stuff is still present. He humiliated himself. And he says that he saw him coming, filled with love and compassion rather than condemnation. He ran to his son, he embraced him, and he kissed him. And the verbiage that's used here is he kept kissing him. He just kissed him, and he 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 kissed him. He kissed him over and over again. This is a picture of what the Father does when we come back to him. It says that his son said to him, Father, I've sinned against both heaven and you, and I'm no longer worthy of being called your son. Now, he didn't add the part about the servant because he didn't have time. His father said to the servants, quick, bring the finest robe. Who had the finest robe? The father. Bring my robe. Put it on him. It speaks to authority. It speaks to dignity. Look at his rags. Look at what he's wearing. Give him dignity back. Give him my robe. And then he says that, bring the finest robe in the house, put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. The ring signifies sonship. It'd have a seal on it. And that seal would carry authority. It would say that I belong to this family. Put a ring on his finger, sandals for his feet. Get him apart from the earth. Cleanse him. It says, and kill the calf we have been fattening. Everybody in Middle Eastern culture, people that had wherewithal, they were always had a fattened calf that they were preparing for special occasions, like a wedding, some kind of special occasion. So when he says prepare the fatted calf, they always would have one. And it says we must celebrate with a feast. For the son of mine was dead and now returned to life. We don't oftentimes think, the reason why we can be lost and not know it? Because we're spiritually dead. We may be alive, we may be breathing, but the spiritual side of us is dead. And it needs to come alive. And so, he says, my son was dead, but now he's alive. He was lost, but now he's found. So the party began. If you've got Bible, I circled, so the party began. That's kind of a big part of it. And then it goes, verse 25, meanwhile, the older son was in the fields working. Now, the older son represents the religious people. This is important to understand. The older son never left. He got his inheritance. He didn't walk away. It said that he was working. And it goes on, when he returned home, he heard music and dancing in the house. And he asked one of the servants what was going on. Your brother is back, he was told, and your father has killed the fattened calf. We're celebrating because of his safe return. You would think their response would be, oh, my brother's back. Dad would be so happy. It's not. And this is important we understand this, because this is why churches get away from doing what God wants to do. Randy, 2 weeks ago, said that 80% of churches are dying. 80% of churches in America are dying. And the reason why they're dying is because they're filled with people that no longer care about what God cares about. And the second we fall into that, we're going to start to die too. The second. And you'll see it. You'll just see it. You'll see people's attitudes change. You'll see their views change, and suddenly they'll find better things to do, and they won't care anymore, and they'll be involved in other things, and this is kind of what happens. The older brother didn't celebrate. It says the older brother was angry. He wouldn't go in, but his father came out and he begged him. But he replied, all these years I've slaved. There's your key too. You see, the older son didn't care about the father either, because everything that he was doing, he viewed it as he was slaving away. All the things I'm doing for the father. I'll do it just in case. I'll do it because that's what I'm supposed to do. So I'll do it. Oh, the offering plate's going by. I'll put a few bucks in there because that's what I'm supposed to do. I haven't been to church for a while. I better go because that's what I'm supposed to do. Oh man, that person's so messed up. Oh, I don't even want to talk to him. That's what my kids used to do. The older brother, I hope that didn't look like really stupid or anything. I used to do that to my kids. They'd be throwing their fit, and I'd be sitting in their face going, He says, I've slaved for you, and I never once refused to do a single thing you told me to do, except love him. And in all that time, you never even gave me one young goat for a feast with my friends. Yet when this son of yours, not my brother, but this son of yours comes back after squandering your money on prostitutes, you celebrate by killing the fatted calf. Who do you think you are? His father, who loves him. Who do you think you are? His father said to him, look, dear son, I love you. You have always stayed by me, and everything that I have is yours. We had to celebrate this happy day, for your brother was dead, and he's come back to life. He was lost, but now he's found. Did the older brother care enough about the father to celebrate? See, there's actually a line missing here. The last line is purposely missing. Jesus tells a story, and there should have been one more part to this story. What did the older brother do? Well, it's purposely gone. It's purposely gone. I want to show you a video, and in this video, I want you to imagine you're the older brother. And the question is, as you watch this play out, how do you feel about the Father? Is there something inside of you that cares about what the Father cares about? Watch this video. Can we just get real honest for a second? Why are you here? Why? I'm glad you're here, and you are so welcome to be here. But if you are a lost son or daughter, maybe today is the day to get found. If you're an older brother that's never gone away, maybe today is a day where you recommit your heart to the Father. Maybe today's the day where it's like, you know what? I'm sorry, Father. I'm sorry for taking this for granted. Now's the time to get back on track. Interesting, that line is missing. What did the older son do? Maybe he joined the party. We know what some of the older sons did. In this particular case, the people that he was talking to, they crucified the Father. They sent him to the cross, and they beat him mercilessly. They just didn't get it. They didn't care. They didn't care about what the Father cared about. They didn't care about the younger brothers that are out there, the younger sisters. All they cared about was themselves. Well, let that not be us. Let us get back to the mission and the vision that God has given us. Let's pray. Father God, I thank you so much for your word today. And Lord, I do thank you so much for seasons of renewal, seasons where perhaps we can be delivered from ourselves. Lord, you have lost sons and daughters that are out there. Maybe some of them are here today. If today's a day of salvation, a day where the lost get found, the day where the dead come alive, then so be it. We lift them up to you. We ask, Lord, that you would bring them, because we as the older siblings, we will celebrate with you. We will celebrate because our brother or sister has been found. So we offer up this time to you, Lord. Holy Spirit, we ask that you would just move in our hearts, move among us. Bring that which is dead to life. Bring that which is lost to a place of rescue. Pray this all in your name, Lord Jesus. Amen. It's beautiful. I stand in the front row, that last part, and I hear you all singing. I want to end this service by reading for you from Romans chapter 10. And it says, if you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is by believing in your heart that you are made right with God. It's by confessing with your mouth that you are saved. As the scriptures tell us, anyone who trusts in him will never be disgraced. Jew, Gentile are the same in this respect. They have the same Lord who gives generously to all who call on him. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they've never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? Unless someone tells them. And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? This is why the scriptures say, how beautiful are the feet of the messengers who bring the good word, the good news. But not everyone welcomes the good news. For Isaiah the prophet said, Lord, who has believed our message? Faith comes from hearing, that is by hearing the good news about Jesus Christ. Either that matters to you or it doesn't. There it is. And in a moment, you're going to leave here. Last week, I gave you homework to think of one name, one person that God lays on your heart that doesn't know him, that you could possibly be a witness to, but at a minimum, be praying for. Continue to do that. If you weren't here last week, I'm asking you to be praying. If all you do is pray for one person, everybody in this room, just pray for one person. Continue to pray that. If you want to get others in line with that, you can let us know the people you're praying for too. Maybe next week you can fill out a prayer card and just put a name of somebody that's on there. But you're going to watch God move because that's what the Father wants to do. Stand, receive this blessing as we dismiss you. I pray that as you leave now, you go knowing the love of God the Father, the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ the Son, and the fellowship and the power of the Holy Spirit, now and always. God bless you. You're dismissed. Have a good day and a good week.